Hi everybody, welcome back. Thanks for watching. Today I'm going to talk about ASEAN, which is the Association for Southeast Asian Nations, which also usually includes Australia, Japan, Korea, and India, which are not really Southeast Asian nations, but they're normally there. And normally everybody from that area, the normal attendees, they almost always attend. And this year was a little bit different because President Xi from China and President Modi from India both did not attend this year. Highly unusual. And the reason why they didn't attend, to me, was pretty clear. And that's because President Trump was there, Prime Minister Carney from Canada was there, and the president of Brazil was there. Now, at these meetings this time, they were held in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, which I've been to. It's a beautiful city, great people, and great food. And it was a great venue because of that. The only place that I can think of in Southeast Asia that might have been a better venue would have been like if it was held in Manila or maybe even Bangkok. But other than those two, I think Kuala Lumpur, which is right up there with them, is a great place, actually. But with everything that was going on, I should say, the funny thing about it is Trump was primarily meeting with China. They had a delegation there, even though Xi wasn't there. And India, Modi wasn't there. And with Brazil, because Brazil got in big trouble with Trump right at the beginning, because Trump says that the president's main opponent did not break the law, did not do anything wrong. They tried to accuse him of insurrection. And Trump says, yeah, there's no proof of that. This is a political prosecution. And so Trump put 50% or more tariffs on everything coming to the United States from Brazil right off the bat, so nothing's coming in from Brazil. Brazil got themselves into a problem. So they chose to go to the ASEAN conference, including the president, to try to mend fences with Trump and get a deal on tariffs. And also, the Trump administration was meeting, I understand, with Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia. So the guys negotiating, Trump's negotiators on the trip, and presumably himself, were very, very busy on this ASEAN trip just because of the sheer numbers of meetings they were having, and even with countries that were not, strictly part of the ASEAN nations. India goes to all of them, but I don't believe that India is actually a member of the Southeast Asian nations, which they're not. Just like Japan and Korea, they're always there making trades and attending everything, but they're not really in Southeast Asia. I wanted to put this out because in the West they never seem to cover anything about these ASEAN meetings. Because yes, they're about trade, but they're about a lot of other things too, but trade is a primary reason. Vietnam kind of got hit hard for two reasons. One, they were taking items that were produced in China down into their warehouses, changing or putting a name on that said made in Vietnam, and then shipped to the United States. Because of that fact, a 40% tariff got put on Vietnam. Because basically Vietnam was being paid to lie about product origin prior to coming to the States. So it was very punitive in nature what happened. Because they were poor, China was getting to do what they wanted because they would pay money for having this so-called quote-unquote work done. The only work that was being done was changing the labels. So, or putting labels on, because a lot of the stuff was being made against, World Trade Organization regulations saying that, point of origin had to be put on the containers and the product at the factory where it was made, and China wasn't doing that. They were sending stuff to both Vietnam, Indonesia, and other countries to have all that done, saying it was made in their countries when in reality it was made in China. So there was meetings on all this kind of thing, and I think even though the leader from China and the leader of India wasn't there, I think this was probably the most important meeting that the ASEAN nations have ever had. I think in the eyes of the world, this meeting that obviously outside of Southeast Asia was very rarely covered, was being covered around the world because of who was there and who was meeting and what was being discussed. So I'm happy for the Southeast Asian nations to, have their status up where it probably always should have been. But to have two of the biggest economies, world leaders, from India and China, not show up at an important meeting like this was actually kind of pathetic and weak on their part. And I know why they didn't come. The reason why they didn't come was they didn't want to be upstaged by Donald Trump, which of course, if they came would happen. But I don't think that gives you a right to wussy out, okay? Which I believe they did. And maybe that is indicative to why we have the problems in world trade today that we do have. Maybe they're not showing up, showed the world why we have the problems we do have. Now, India, China, and Brazil, and some others like South Africa, are in this quote-unquote BRICS thing where they want to depose the dollar, not use the dollar. They're anti-U.S. So these anti-U.S. people, you don't get any breaks from Donald Trump when you're anti the U.S. I think Brazil just found that out the hard way, and so did India when he put 50% tariffs on everything coming from him. Now, India won't let the United States import anything into their country. You want to know why they got 50% tariff? Yeah, that's it. They need agricultural goods, they need food, but they wouldn't import anything from the United States, not in any category. They just totally disrespect the United States. Well, Trump totally disrespected them early on, and that stayed that way. And they desperately wanted a meeting with Trump. Why they didn't just go to the United States for a meeting is beyond me. But they did it at the ASEAN meeting, so we'll see. I somehow don't think they want free and fair trade. Most of the countries in the world that Donald Trump's been dealing with, none of them wanted free and fair trade, and that's why the tariffs have come out against everybody. Well, that's what I wanted to say for today. My congratulations to the ASEAN nations. I think what you're doing finally got recognized and finally brought Southeast Asia, into the spotlight. We'll see what happens going forward, whether or not